The NFL has informed teams where the cap figure will be for 2025. And let's just say, if you're an NFL general manager, you're smiling ear to ear. Browns 3D starts now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. Browns 3D on the OBR, brought to you by State Sharp Mower Sales and Service. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate everybody who's been supporting us here, as we've done an uptick here in your nightly video content on the OBR streaming channels. Check it out, certainly on YouTube and, of course, over on Twitch. Make sure you're subscribed. All of this in addition to the daily content you are getting from the fabulous group of writers here at the OBR. I think as the days go on, I think we all start to get a little bit more excited, certainly get a little bit more nervous as the Browns venture into what needs to be an absolute franchise-altering offseason for this team. Certainly starting next weekend in Indianapolis with the NFL Combine. Not just the testing and, evaluating of the college crop coming into the NFL, but certainly a lot of behind the scenes as, the non-legal tampering portion of NFL free agency kicks off as well. NFL released 2 NFL teams today. It is not a finalized number on the NFL cap for 2025. But from Dan Graziano, the NFL today informed teams that the 2025 per team salary cap will fall in the range of $277.5 million to $281.5 million, way up from last year's $255.4 million. Cap will increase by more than $53 million over the last 2 years. So just from last year to this year, and if you take the low end of that number, that 277.5, well, that's basically $22 million. Could go up to $26 million that teams have the opportunity to spend if they choose on their roster for 2025. Our own Jack Duffin here at the OBR, basically just call Jack the human calculator at this point, is in agreement with several that have stated it appears that the NFL cap is going to go up, about $5 million more than expected. $5 million more than expected. That gets you a legitimate piece on an NFL roster. So we've talked about this, and the Browns, yes, currently when the league year starts, they certainly could get in compliance, before then, but by then they have to get themselves at the cap or under the cap. We had Jack on recently, and Jack basically said just by, reworking some contracts simply on several players, I believe the final number that Jack had was $89.7 million the Browns can create in extra cap space for themselves. Then there's, of course, the Deshaun Watson thing and, others post-June 1st cuts. A lot of work certainly can be done for Cleveland, but to create money and quickly is certainly something that Andrew Berry will have the opportunity to do. I was going to take one positional group today and talk about them. And after getting this news while I was trying to prep, I decided we'll take it and kind of may hopefully put it into, this positional group talking about here today. And, just where it can certainly, help this team. We're going to talk, obviously, defensive ends here. It was a group that certainly was a great group for the Cleveland Browns in 2023. Certainly underachieved in 2024. And we've all gotten to know Jim Schwartz, where Jim Schwartz stands, what his defensive philosophy is, how he loves to let his corners play man coverage because he just plans to just unleash the hounds on the opposing team's quarterback. They were unable to truly do that with the success that was needed in 2024. And they have a chance to basically recreate that room in 2025 to hope that it basically gets back to, what they got in 23, and of course fell well below expectation in 2024. This certainly predominantly, hinges, on Myles Garrett. Until I hear more, see more, or find a way to believe that the possibility that Myles Garrett is going to move on from this franchise, I just have no way to believe it, that this is going to end. And I'll start just with this. Now, Myles Garrett basically is the face of the franchise right now. Myles Garrett is by far the best player on the Cleveland Browns roster right now. Just say this to yourself out loud. If the Browns were to trade Myles Garrett, who is the best player on the Cleveland Browns? My answer to that question would probably be Denzel Ward. And Denzel has been fantastic through 7 years now and going into his 8th year. And this isn't a disrespect to Denzel. It is not a disrespect to the cornerback position at all. But if your best positional player on your roster is a cornerback, that's probably not a great situation to be in. It's very easy as an offensive-minded coach, coordinator, to just say simply, well, we're not going to put him in any position to affect the game. Simple enough. You can find a way to stop throwing at Denzel Ward if you choose to. Therefore, you're going to eliminate his impact on any game a great amount. You can't necessarily do that with defensive line play. You certainly can't do that with a player like Myles Garrett, who has shown the ability over the years to line up in several areas along that line, inside, over either guard, over the center, certainly outside on the right side or the left side, in a wide 9 as well. Myles Garrett is truly a do-it-all defender as a pass rusher, as a defensive lineman in this day and age in the NFL. The Browns, and look, you could get wooed by a package. And for a lot of people right now, be careful what you're reading on social media. Be careful of some of these, potential trade things being put out there. There was one, for the Jets maybe looking to get to 1, and, that's an astronomical amount. It truly is. So just be careful, what you're reading and, who you're getting your information from right now, because you could be led astray very, very easily by some of the information. For the Browns, and again, you can, and ideally, if you were Cleveland, you want to keep Myles, and you are going to sit down with Myles and say, we're going to redo your contract and once again have you be the highest defensive paid player in the game, which he is absolutely deserving of. Defensive player of the year in 2023, finalist very easily, could have been the defensive player of the year in 2024. He's integral. He's probably the biggest reason that Jim Schwartz came to Cleveland to coach this defense. Does this spike in the cap necessarily change things as far as the Browns saying, oh, maybe we will trade Myles? Not much. Like I said, the expectation for the cap, it's going to come back a little heavier than what teams had expected. But it's certainly not going to come back to a number where the Cleveland Browns all of a sudden say, oh, okay, well, we can move Myles and we're not strapped. The dead cap number is just still way, way too difficult of a number to handle for a team. With all of that money that the Browns could have, and with finally having a full allotment of draft capital, 12 selections here in the 2025 NFL draft, you can't replace Myles Garrett, but you can, with that cap space and that draft capital, turn this team around rather quickly and turn them into competitors for the 2025 season. I believe that's the way it'll end up. I think that's the way it should end up. If you're the Cleveland Browns and you're Andrew Berry, the opportunity is very real right now for you to get this team right and get this team back in contention in 2025. We're going to talk some more defensive ends here, your latest Browns 3D. We've been talking for a couple of weeks now, and look, maybe you're not ready to believe it, but spring is about to be sprung. And what does that mean? It means you need to find more information and check out State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights. If you're local to Cleveland, then they are your one-stop shop for all things lawn equipment. Look, you want to spend your Sundays watching the Browns, not cutting your grass. Let the guys at State help you get your weekend back. They specialize in both residential and commercial equipment for Toro, the brand professionals have counted on for more than 100 years. Whether you're looking for a new, dependable time cutter, zero turn, genuine Toro replacement parts, or expert service from experienced technicians who keep your mower in peak condition, State has got your back. They're veteran-owned. The Kane family are lifetime Clevelanders, lifetime Browns fans, and big supporters of us over here at the OBR. Again, if you're local to Cleveland, State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights is your hometown team for all your lawn equipment needs. All their info is at statesharp.com. That is STATESHARP.com. We continue on here. The major news of the day, relevant to the Cleveland Browns, but is certainly relevant to the rest of the NFL, is the finalization ballpark area. We'll know in a couple of weeks what exactly is the NFL cap for 2025. We know it will fall between $277.5 million and $281.5 million. Again, from most of the capologists who are not in front offices in the NFL, but do this and do it so well. It figures that it is about $5 million higher than the expectation. Now, as I said earlier, that is certainly an opportunity to bring in a legit piece. $5 million. $5 million more than expected. That is the opportunity for every roster in the NFL to get in one more significant piece. You can find a nice rotational player for $5 million. For the Browns, and we're going to have this out on the OBR tomorrow, we've been doing these positional groups, and basically we all get together with the work of Jack Duffin. We try to build our ideal. We're not prognosticating what the Cleveland Browns are going to do. We are attempting to build what we would do in each positional room. Now, we're not talking quarterbacks today. Could the Browns conceivably feel that they need to draft a quarterback at number 2 overall? There is 100% a lot of merit to that. No doubt about it. But things could change. They could trade. They could sign a free agent, and all of a sudden that changes things. And maybe they don't necessarily like the quarterbacks at 1 and 2. They like the quarterbacks a little bit further down the road. And we'll also look again in 2026 if we have to. Fine. That's all we're going to do on the quarterbacks here. Pretty much the consensus best player in the 2025 NFL draft is Abdul Carter, edge rusher out of Penn State. 6'3", 250. We'll get those numbers confirmed next weekend. I believe it'll be the 27th, so that would be Thursday, when we will be getting defensive line workouts and linebackers working out. So make sure you're checking all that out. Obviously, the NFL Combine coverage. And I'm going to tell you right now, that will be a fun day. This defensive line group, inside and outside, is beyond ridiculous. It truly is. So Carter comes in, legit 6'3", legit 250, checking boxes. As the best overall consensus player at this point in the draft class, will he work out? Don't know. We'll see. Also, he is represented by Drew Rosenhaus. And Drew Rosenhaus definitely does things the way he wants. He won't conform, nor should he. He's got the track record to prove it with his clientele. So we'll see if we get the best player in the draft performing at the Combine, or will it be at Penn State, And Penn State for years has always run, in my opinion, one of the better pro days. Penn State is nice enough, believe it or not, at the end of their pro day to actually release the numbers. I don't know if anybody's ever been to a pro day. I have. NFL guys ignore folks like me. Maybe if you have an agent tie there, you can get an idea of some numbers on, a guy that, you're looking at. And if it is that agent's client, you can kind of get an idea. Those numbers certainly could be inflated. But with all the scouts there, they all time everything. And then basically everybody gets together afterwards and they take all the times, and could be 10, 12, 11, however many guys hold stopwatches. And they basically average it out. And that's how you get your consensus of how a set player tested at a pro day. But you take Abdul Carter too. It gives you just an absolute dominant athletic presence to go with Miles. You'd be foolish not to do it if you found a way to address the quarterback position before the draft. It'd be foolish not to do it. Now you bring Carter into the mix. You have Elijah McGuire. I think a lot of people haven't really appreciated what Elijah McGuire has done over the last couple of years with the Browns. And I don't know if you guys kind of remember earlier in Myles Garrett's career, the Browns were kind of chasing, sound players opposite him. Olivier Vernon was a very sound, technical, do your assignment type of defensive end. Those two did well together. The only problem was at the time they had nobody on the interior. And that's, of course, after Larry Ogunjobi left, of course. They think, and what I think as well, and what I've seen in my studying of Elijah McGuire is he's an extremely sound, technical, do his assignment player. You're not getting a ton of the flash yet. I believe the sack production is going to increase. Elijah McGuire was a really good player at Missouri. Don't fall for that notion, that Elijah McGuire is just, a run-of-the-mill fourth or fifth defensive end. I believe Elijah McGuire is certainly capable of being a starter in this league, or even possibly being your first rotational defensive end. That being said, Abdul Carter is just so stinking good. I'll just have a million defensive ends. Why not? If they're all good, they all can get the job done. It allows me to get some guys some rest that they need. And let's be honest, Miles ain't no spring chicken anymore. He doesn't need to play the insane amount of reps he was playing early in his career. And if you remember, at times they were sitting there with his hands on his hips because he was on the field longer than he should have been. So if I can go back to just an absolute unit of behemoths and just, rotating dudes in and out, I will do so. Alex Wright. I think some of us maybe set the expectations a little higher for Alex Wright than he's achieved. And I'm not saying the expectations and what we thought Alex Wright could be were wrong. Alex Wright was a unique guy coming out of UAB. And there's been times where we've really seen the growth process from Alex, with his ability to play the run, his ability to play the pass. He is a very unique piece for the Browns because of the fact that he can line up inside and outside. It allows the Browns to remain creative with Myles Garrett, again, over the center, over a guard, over either tackle, and wide nine, whatever it may be. But Alex Wright was a key component of that and was certainly a huge component of Myles Garrett winning Defensive Player of the Year in 2023 because he can get so much done and can give you legit pass rush ability from the inside and certainly from the outside. And from the outside, he really, really improves on setting the edge and run defense. He's in a contract here. If he plays well, most likely he's going to play his way out of Cleveland. So addressing this defensive end room right now for 2025, which also certainly could give you some looks towards 2026, is not a poor idea by any means whatsoever. Keep adding to that room. So that's 4 right there. There's definitely talk about Agbanai Okoronkwo in his future with the Cleveland Browns. And I think I could move on at this point. I think Ogbo has been a good player for this team. I actually have a boatload of respect for him in 2023, coming back injured to make sure that he got an opportunity to taste the playoffs. I think that was, showed a lot of the character that Ogbonnaya Okoronkwo is. But that being said, on the last year of his deal, certainly could be a trade candidate and whatever. If you wanted to flip picks or whatever, just, maybe understand that there's just not an opportunity for Ogbonnaya here anymore. And keep in mind, when he got here, Alex Wright hadn't played much. Elijah McGuire was a rookie. So it makes sense, that maybe Alex Wright and Elijah McGuire have, jumped in the pecking order, certainly over Ogbonnaya. But and this is kind of where we were getting with this cap information, with this kind of jump, a $5 million jump, more than expected in the cap space, it can allow the Browns to maybe entertain the free agent class at pass rusher. There's always a boatload of them. And I'm not saying you got to go double digits on Josh Sweat over $10 million. Wouldn't hate it. But there'll be value guys out there. New York Giants a few years ago drafted Azeez Ojulari. And Azeez Ojulari, I would say if you spoke to a lot of people, they would probably believe at this point in his career, he's underachieved. And that's probably safe to say. But when you actually dig deeper into it, and you factor in the account in 2022, he only played 7 games. You factor into 2023 and this past 2024, he only played 11 games. So that's 6 games the last 2 years. That is 9 games in 2022 after playing all of his games as a rookie. In those 4 seasons, he's got 22 overall sacks to this point. So keep in mind, that's a boatload of time missed. He's already missed 6, 9, 12, 9. That's 21 games missed. So it's almost a full season and a quarter Ojulari has missed in the NFL. 22 sacks. Over 4 years, that's 5.5 sacks. But keep in mind, you're taking that number and you're not dividing it into 4 seasons. You're dividing it into 3. Because he's missed 21 games of his career. So technically, he's only played 3 seasons. So you take that number, and that's 7.333 sacks per season for Azeez Ojulari, who will not break the bank. You could certainly somebody the Cleveland Browns should entertain. A guy Pete Smith and I loved a few years ago coming out of Houston was Turner. Patrick Turner ended up with the New Orleans Saints. For him, it has not gone so well. But we know the Cleveland Browns, and certainly under Andrew Berry, have loved to chase defensive players, certainly defensive linemen, that have underachieved. And were once former high picks. Turner's only had 5 sacks. But again, his first year in New Orleans, played 5 games. Second year, 8 games. 23, 2 games. This past year, 16 games. So he's missed a ton of time. So it's not necessarily where you're at, where you have a full written script on Turner's ability. Certainly should be somebody the Cleveland Browns could consider in free agency. And it's not trying to block Elijah McGuire. It's not trying to, stop Alex Wright from achieving towards his, future, hopefully solid contract extension within the NFL. It's just about getting more dudes in there. You got to chase after Lamar Jackson. You got to deal with Joe Burrow. We'll see what Pittsburgh's going to do, but that's a lot of work you're asking from your, pass rushers just with Lamar Jackson alone. If you're an AFC North team, now if you don't go the route of a veteran pass rusher, and look, in this scenario, it's Abdul Carter at 2. Would you be willing to double dip in the 2025 draft at the edge position? I'll be completely honest with you. I think the Cleveland Browns could double dip at running back. They could double dip at defensive tackle. They could double dip at defensive end as well. They've got 12 picks. Look at the strongest positional groups. And if you've got excess picks and the Browns can't find a way to flip those picks towards 26, go to where the great talent is. Running back position, certainly. Defensive tackle position, certainly. And defensive end, certainly. So that gives us, looking at some guys that would be available, certainly, on day 3. And a couple of names stand out for me. And right off the bat, you're kind of going to look at, the size. Tyler Batty out of BYU. His stats as a pass rusher are not going to wow you. But as I said earlier, in talking about Myles Garrett and trying to find that smart, functional, scheme-oriented, does his job, grades out well type of defensive end, Tyler Batty out of BYU, 6'5" and change, good build. He's not going to wow you with the sack numbers. His best year sack total was in 23 at BYU. It was 5.5. This year, he only had 1.5. But he had 59 combined tackles, 7 tackles for loss. For a guy that you can get on day 3, that is ridiculously good value. That is a guy that can certainly contribute. And that is a guy where you say he's my 5th defensive end. That's not too shabby, and not too shabby at all. And we'll learn, hey, we'll see scheme. You dig more into the tape. Was it Batty holding himself back? Was it the BYU defense holding him back? And we'll get an idea of just what kind of athlete he is, like I said, next Thursday in Indianapolis. Also, from Minnesota is another one, an impressive guy, and that is Ja Joyner out of Minnesota. He's another guy that played 5 seasons for the Golden Gophers. So again, going to be a guy that's a tad bit older. But now here's the guy, if he's a day 3 guy, has probably been more of a successful pass rusher as opposed to the do your assignment, grade out type of guy. So last 2 seasons, it would be 12 sacks for Joyner, so 6 sacks per season his last 2. Last 2 seasons, 14 tackles for loss. Again, 6'5", 260 range. There's going to be a lot of guys that are going to blow up the combine athletically, and there are so many defensive linemen. I got to be honest, I don't know how they're just going to have 2 groups. I mean, they're going to start that thing at 3 o'clock Thursday. They'll be lucky if they're done by 9 with the amount of defensive linemen going to the combine this year. So just, again, there is a lot to be had out there. And we're going to highlight just one more guy here as well. And we'll get a little hat tip here. My boy, Pete Smith. Fadil Diggs out of now Syracuse, but was at A&M the early part of his career. Not much to show his first year at A&M. Then his last 3 years, it was 8 sacks, rotating in. And obviously, if A&M has solid pass rushers and D-line guys in this draft, you can kind of understand how Fadil Diggs got out of Dodge, went to Cuse. And this season, now you want a guy where, did he do a little bit of both? Did he get after the passer? Was he a very active in run stopping as well? 45 combined tackles, 14 tackles for loss, and 7.5 sacks this fall up in Syracuse for the Orange. Interesting guy. Will be there on day 3. The Browns will be inundated. 8 selections on day 3. I'm not saying they're going to make all these picks, but they're certainly going to make some. And again, you look at the positional groups that are going to be available, and you try to find out what's going to work best for this team. You're going to want to highlight defensive line play. You're going to want to highlight running backs. You're going to highlight those positions. Interior defensive line, edge, running backs. There's a lot to be had for the Browns. So the news of the day, the NFL has not finalized the cap number for 2025, but has given the ballpark between $277.5 million and $281.5 million. The belief from most is that is actually going to be more than $5 million more than what was the expectation. Cap will be more than $20 million higher in 2025 than it was in 2024. NFL general managers right now are giddy, and rightfully so. A huge spike in cap space, a draft class that may not be dominated with top-end talent, but has ridiculously good talent that may not necessarily warrant first-round grades. You want to get your roster right. It's there to be had in 2025. Cleveland Browns can maneuver, get themselves a lot of cap space, have a lot of draft capital. It's time to undo the stink of the Deshaun Watson trade for the Cleveland Browns. Again, we're not talking quarterback. Figure it out. And if it takes 3-4 guys, whatever. Hopefully one of them hits. But the Browns can load up on every other positional group on their roster. We appreciate you all for the support here. Browns 3D, part of the nightly content lineup here on the OBR streaming channels. Make sure you're subscribed in YouTube. Of course, make sure you're subscribed over on Twitch as well. Check out the fantastic written content day in, day out by our fabulous writers. Browns 3D on the OBR has been brought to you by State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service. This has been your daily delivery of all things dog pound. Browns 3D. And we'll talk to you all tomorrow.